Hi, I'm Melissa Rambaran.
And I'm Candice Milano.
Welcome back to The Build Up, presented by Brown Harris Stevens and Guaranteed Rate, where we discuss the secrets of building wealth through real estate.
Today we're sitting down with Pace Morby, widely known as the creative finance guy. From starting as a contractor to building a national portfolio and founding the SubTo community, Pace has shown thousands how to buy real estate without relying on banks or big cash reserves.
So Candice, the latest numbers are wild. Nearly 1 in 3 homes were paid for in cash this past year. That's the highest share since 2014. So we're talking institutional investors, foreign buyers, and affluent individuals who don't really need a mortgage, and they're finding a lot of opportunities in the market today.
Yes, this is a very big shift, but it is very stabilizing for the market because, of course, when you're not relying on financing, there's a higher percentage of those deals actually closing, because often when a deal doesn't close, a lot of times it's due to an issue with financing. Also, with this high interest rate environment that we're currently in, all these cash deals are keeping the market afloat because a lot of people have paused on buying who are relying on a mortgage because of affordability. So for both reasons, this type of cash buyer dominance is helping our market.
Yeah, but also I can definitely argue the other side of this is they're pushing a lot of buyers out, right? For those people who only have 20 to 30% down, they stand a less chance of getting those houses. And we've even talked about that before on this podcast, especially with institutional investors. You know, they're coming in strong. Sometimes they overpay and they outbid the regular buyer who, you know, are really actually looking for a primary home. So that is also very alarming.
Yes, it is hard to compete with the cash buyers. We've spoken about that. And there are certain strategies that buyers can utilize to best position themselves. But it doesn't change the fact that investors see this as a counter-cyclical play where they're really taking advantage of the fact that they have more leverage in the market.
Yeah, but like I said, that's fine and you make a good point, and it's fine for investors. But again, if we're thinking about those first-time home buyers, it really puts them in a bad position. The more cash buyers that flood the market, the fewer finance deal appraisers and lenders get to benchmark, which actually can inflate the comps. And comps are all over the place in these kind of neighborhoods especially if you're overbuying, then it puts a really, buyers who are financing, and especially first-time home buyers, in a really, really bad place.
Yeah, I understand it's not an easy time right now. The one upside that some are trying to look for in this environment is that it's short-term pain for long-term gain, because some are arguing that the presence of these cash buyers are really helping to prevent a larger housing market collapse because they are keeping the market going. So that's kind of what we're also seeing.
Yeah, but it should be about access and opportunity, right? I think every buyer has a right to have that equal opportunity in order to buy in. Otherwise, they'll just keep on paying rent, and they're being forced out of the opportunity of owning.
Yeah, I think that's the key, though, that it isn't an equal opportunity, right? And so right now we're seeing those that have cash who can avoid the really high interest rate environment having better opportunities. But on the positive side, we are seeing rates come down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the more that can continue to come down, it will start to level out the playing field a bit more, because those buyers will then who are financing will regain some of that purchasing power back that they've lost.
I get it. Cash isn't just power. It's really about positioning. And right now it's rewriting the rules of real estate as we see it.
Definitely.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
From residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
All right, Pace, we're so excited to have you here today. Welcome to The Build Up.
Thank you so much. I'm pumped to be here.
Wonderful. And we're excited to talk to you today about, all your strategies that you have and you've been implementing. But before that, we want to hear a little bit more about your story. So you began your career as a contractor. How did that foundation influence how you look at deals today?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I started my career as a child of 12 kids in a family of 12 kids and learning, how to do my own dishes and how to do my own laundry, and nobody could take care of my stuff for me, and having to earn my own car while my friends were, asking their parents for debit cards and cell phones and all that kind of stuff. I was bagging groceries and packing donuts, and I just learned work ethic at an early age. Then when I got home I went on a religious mission to Korea, and I knocked like 79,800 doors in 2 years speaking Korean. I think that also was a big part of the foundation of like not being afraid to hear the word no, or, learning how to talk to a variety of different people. Then I got home, jumped into construction because that's what my parents were doing. And that's all I knew, right? My little environment taught me, this is your options, brother. Get into construction. And I did that for a long time, thought I was killing it. And I did that for Open Door, Zillow, OfferPad. These big companies all hired me. And then at age 30, I had this like angel sent from heaven named Bethany that came and taught me how to get my first real estate deal, and everything changed.
Yeah. Wow. That's definitely what we really want to hear more about. You're really known as someone that is an expert when it comes to creative finance. And so you tell us more about that transition from getting into real estate, not from the construction side, but really moving into being an investor and utilizing creative financing.
I learned as a contractor really early on that we get paid to solve people's problems, right? People can't solve their own problems, whether it's adding square footage to their own home or flipping a house that they just bought or what have you. I was the solution to their problem. And I learned to find problems, right? That's what I was doing. As I said, if I can find more people with more problems, I'll make more money as a contractor. The bad thing was I was trading my time for money. And, Bethany comes along and she says to me, Pace, you are a slave, but you think you're a business owner. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Bethany? She says, well, I'm your client, right, Pace? Like if I buy a house, you have a project to go and do a renovation on. What happens if I don't buy a project? Do you have the ability to go get your own renovations? And I go, yeah, I'll go to another customer. She goes, again, that person owns the project. You are working for them. You are basically a glorified employee. And to be honest with you, Pace, you could be replaced with literally a simple Google search. You need to find different problems. And those problems are owning these assets and owning these properties that I'm owning because I'm actually a business owner. You are just a slave to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady is like beating me up. And I told her, I said, I don't know how to find money. I don't know how to find a good deal. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. I don't have good credit. I don't know how to work with banks. And she said, Pace, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never used a bank. I've never used credit, and I've never used any of my own money. And I go, that sounds like an infomercial scam that I've heard on the radio. And what was cool about her is, this is where I adopted a lot of how I teach. She just says, pull out your phone and I'll show you right now. I'll show you right on the spot exactly how to do it. And within 2 weeks, I made 25 grand helping a seller move to a new house. And she couldn't sell this really old house that she had for the price that she needed. And I started learning about creative finance. So I'll give you a good example of what creative finance is. I just did a deal yesterday. So this is like a really fresh deal. This is what creative finance is. I'm talking to a guy yesterday named Corey, and Corey owns an apple orchard, and he's making a good amount of money, in the apple orchard business. He sells apples to people that are doing, applesauce and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. And he has a good empire, but he has a bigger opportunity. And his bigger opportunity is to go make 30,000 hens for an egg company. I know this is weird, but welcome to real estate. So have you guys ever gone to Walmart and seen like the good egg, the really nice packaging, really, really fancy? So that company wants him to move to a different state and work for them. And he says, well, I have this farm and okay, I got to sell my farm, my apple farm, and I'll come work for you guys because it's a better opportunity. The problem is he owes $2 million on the farm, and he lists the property with a real estate agent who only knows traditional real estate. The agent puts it on the market for 2.3. They have to lower it to 2.2, then 2.1. Now he's selling it for exactly what he owes. And he finally just fires this real estate agent after 14 months. Okay. So you can imagine the problem that this guy has. He's like, I can't sell the house. I can't get out of this apple orchard business, which consumes my life, in order to jump into a much larger opportunity that would amplify my family's, legacy. So these types of opportunities are everywhere. I simply called a guy yesterday. His name's Corey. I said, hey, Corey, my name's Pace. I'll take over your apple farm and I'll take over the $2 million that you owe to your bank. Just let me make the payments. And his answer was, how soon can we close? Like, can you come in and take over my farm right now? Now, this is a farm making 30 grand a month net. He just doesn't want to go build a team that he doesn't live next to. And he's like, can you run the organization? Can you take over all my payments? So I'm coming in, taking over a farm that's making $30,000 a month, a team that's already existing, and I'm solving a seller's problem. I've put no money in the deal. I've got zero credit check. I have no bank that I've gone to. I did not use a license, and I paid no money to get the deal done. That's creative finance. I solved somebody's problem they couldn't solve without me, and I solved it by literally just taking over the thing that they either no longer want or they have outgrown. This can be done with everything. It can be done with RV parks, mobile home parks, businesses. It can be done with land or single family homes, Airbnbs, Section 8. Does not matter. You can go in and take over somebody else's payments and make a tremendous amount of money in the process. So creative finance is a massive problem-solving tool, is essentially what it is.
It's very interesting. And so you made that pivot into creative finance. So let's break that down into what that actually looks like, right? We know you just walked us through that real deal, but for listeners who are new, what exactly, and we hear this term subject to, right? What exactly is that and why is it so powerful?
Subject to is being done in your life all the time. And you probably have met people around you that have done subject to deals. They just weren't called subject to deals. So for example, I have a large family, and I had an older brother that had a car. He's 3 years older than me. So he bought his car, a Honda Civic, when he was 16. And by the time I was 16, he was 19, and he had outgrown this Honda Civic, but he still had payments on the Honda Civic. And he goes, man, I'm going to go sell this thing and just get rid of it so I can go buy the vehicle I want. And I said, well, why don't you just let me take the payments? And he's like, okay, yeah, sure. Here's the payments. Here's the car. There you go. And when you sell the car, pay me a little bit of extra money, but I don't want to deal with it anymore. That process or that transaction is called a subject to transaction. I bought something subject to somebody else's existing payment. So I didn't have to apply to the bank. I didn't have to go get a new payment. I didn't have to go put a down payment down. I didn't have to have my credit checked. I just bought his Honda Civic subject to the existing debt. You can do this with cell phones. I've done this with cell phones. I've done it with airplanes. I've done it with planes, trains. I've done it with all sorts of things you can imagine. So this happens around you. I'm sure you have friends that just took over a sister's payment, or maybe a friend that took over another friend's payment, or what have you. These things are happening all the time. Another way that this is happening all the time is that, have you guys ever used your parents' debit card or credit card when you go to the store?
Yeah, definitely. We have, yeah.
So you used their credit. You used their line of credit with the bank. It wasn't even your parents' money, which is funny. It was the credit card's, money. You didn't have to use your credit. You didn't have to apply for a credit card. You didn't have to do any of those things. Your parents just gave you access to their capital, and you went and bought whatever it was subject to their credit card debt. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a very simple way to break it down.
You are doing this all the time. People are doing this all the time. And so when you start realizing that this is also being done in real estate, you start realizing, okay, so I could go to Ulta or Sephora and use my mom's credit card and do subject to transactions. Or I could go and find houses that people would let me take over their payments, and I can go and turn it into an Airbnb or a Section 8, and I can make a lot of cash flow without any money in the game. And so it's kind of the cheat code to get into real estate.
Yes. And that is a really important cheat code, because a lot of our listeners, and one of the most common questions we get asked is, I don't have the money for a down payment. How can I get started in real estate? And it's hard for all of us to really save up, depending on what market you're in, 5-6 figures for that first property. Once you have the first one, yes, it's easier to then leverage that and grow from there, although it will take you a long time. But yeah, it's that first property is always the hardest. And so this is such a great strategy for ourselves and for our listeners to understand, so we can get in sooner and scale faster. But you talked about it before that, on the initial no cash down, no credit, it does sound too good to be true, like you said. So what is one of the biggest misconceptions you want to clear up for anyone who's still hesitant that this is maybe, a scam?
How about the misconception that it's too good to be true? Think about this. You and I, you guys are in New York, right? And we're talking as if we're in the same room. 20 years ago, somebody would say, that sounds like voodoo witchcraft and that's too good to be true. Yet we are living in a technology that is, to somebody, too good to be true. Are there people on the planet right now that don't even know that this kind of technology even exists? The answer is yes. It's increasingly less and less and less. But what about a Stanley Cup? I know you two girls probably have Stanley Cups. 20 years ago, if somebody told you I could have ice in a cup that doesn't melt for 5 days, you'd be like, bro, that's too good to be true. Same thing 20 years ago, an iPhone. If somebody told you an iPhone could do what it does today, they'd say that sounds too good to be true. So that is the biggest myth, is that this has been around for 100+ years. In fact, Sam Adams, one of the forefathers of our country. I have this really, really, really cool parchment from 300 years ago. And it's the original. It was found in a barn in Massachusetts. And this parchment is Sam Adams. He's obviously a very famous guy in our nation's history. He dies. And when he dies, he puts all this burden on his wife. She has all this acreage and all these estates and all of these things. She's like, I don't know how to manage this stuff. What should I do? And so somebody came to her and said, well, why don't you sell your farm on seller finance and let somebody come along and make monthly payments to you, but let you still live on the farm, like a smaller portion of the farm. They take care of the farm. And she goes, well, then I get money. I take care of my bills. That's nice. But how do I, feed my family and all of those things? And the guy helped her structure a deal that the buyer bought 160 acres from her, paid her $4,000 every month, which covered way more than her expenses, but also gave her 15 cattle, 100 chicken, and a whole bunch of other animals also as a form of payment on this parchment. It was all handwritten, a seller finance deal. Guys, this has been done for hundreds of years. I did not invent this. I just am better at articulating how to do it. And I would also say, going back to the too good to be true thing, for people that don't know me and follow me, here's what I would suggest. Go to my YouTube channel. I have a lady that emailed me in April of this year. And she emails me. She says, my name is Maddie. I am living on the streets. I've been on the streets for 4 years. My husband was murdered 4 years ago. I did not know how to make any money. I had to sell everything to stay afloat. No life insurance, no pension, no nothing. And I've been on the streets going from shelter to shelter to shelter with no family members to rely on. And I'm a little old half Chinese, half black lady that everybody's kind of forgotten about. Will you help me? I said, I'll help you, but I will only help you if you let me document how anybody can do this business. And we put it all on YouTube. And she's like, are you kidding me? I would love to do that. So I put 5 episodes of this lady in 20 days. She got her first deal. This, by the way, here's her resources. She's in a lady shelter on a cot with no locker, no private bathroom, no nothing. That's her life. She has a broken phone. Her whole screen is shattered. So she has to kind of guess where she's pushing on her phone. That is the only tool this lady has. And she got her first deal just 20 days into doing this. Cool. That doesn't solve her homeless problem. So what I did is I said, all right, we got our first deal. Why don't we go get you a house? And we'll find you a house that you can take over the payments on. She says, well, how do I make the payments? I don't have any money. I said, Maddie, you're going to rent out the other rooms. Those people renting out the rooms are going to pay not only the payment, they're going to pay the utilities. They're going to pay the cleaning fee. They're going to pay all of that. And you are also going to have $2,000 extra per month in your pocket. And so Maddie just moved into her brand new house, $550,000 home with a 2.9% interest rate. She just moved into it 30 days ago. So I love dispelling those myths, and not by doing it by my words, but by doing it by my actions. And so we documented it and turned it into like a 5-part series so people would watch it step by step exactly how they could do it too. Yeah. It was cool. She texts me almost every morning. I think she's done about 20 deals now, and she's living in this little house. Well, it's not a little house. She lives in I think it's about a 2,400 square foot house. We took out the living room, the dining room, and here's where the deal came from. It was somebody that was doing Airbnb, and Airbnb is not doing well right now because the economy is a little slow. People are spending less money, right? So this Airbnb operator says, I'm just going to sell this property on the market. He hires a real estate agent, but he owes too much money to the bank for a buyer to come in and give him enough money to pay the bank off. So Maddie called him using my strategy and said, hey, Mr. Airbnb guy, his name's Tim. Hey, Tim, my name's Maddie. I'd love to buy your house. Can I just take over your payments? He goes, oh my gosh, when can we close escrow? Please take this over. So the house was already renovated, so it didn't need to be renovated. And she put it on a platform called PadSplit. I don't own PadSplit, but we use a company called PadSplit.com. PadSplit found her tenants for her, screened her tenants for her, collects the money for her, divvies all the money up, wires her money every single month. So she'd have to manage these people. She obviously wouldn't know how to do that. And she just gets one of the rooms for free, all the bills paid for. PadSplit runs the whole thing, and she gets $2,000 in her pocket every single month.
Yeah, that's a great solution, right? But as you know, with every strategy, obviously it's not all upside, right? This seems, like you said, too good to be true. So let's talk about a deal that you did that didn't really go as planned. What did you learn from that?
Oh my gosh. The downside to my strategy is that it is so powerful that you don't even need an appraiser and you don't need an inspector. So let's say I go buy a real estate deal with a bank. Well, guess what the bank wants? They want an appraisal. They want an inspection. They want all these things. I don't have to do any of those things in my strategy. And so a lot of times I'll just kind of walk a property and go, oh man, this property is awesome. Well, I bought a property in Corpus Christi a couple of years ago, and I went to the property. I actually flew there, went to the property, spent a day there, walking with contractors, doing my due diligence. But the one thing I did not do is check the underground sewer. And I ended up having to I had to move all 18 tenants out of this property. And I had to tear out all the underground piping, redo it all underneath the 3-story building. We were digging underneath it. And it ended up costing me like $400,000. And I luckily was able to go back to the seller and get a credit for that $400,000 because I threatened him with a lawsuit. But the reality is I spent a year of my life in agony because the tool that I use, Creative Finance, allows me to skip a lot of steps. And some of those steps are there for a reason, like inspections. And so now we do an inspection beyond me. I hire an inspector, it costs $500 type of thing. But I could have lost $400,000 on that if I didn't go back and get a credit from the seller.
Yeah. So looking ahead, where do you see creative financing headed in the next 5 years or so? Because this is not a term or a strategy that we hear a lot of. So what do you see the future for it?
Well, it's interesting. The longer I've been in the business, the more I realize how long creative finance has been around, well before me. And I'll give you a good example. When you go buy eggs at Walmart, a lot of people look at that and they go, okay, Walmart went to the farmer and bought eggs and put it on their shelf. And then they sell those eggs for double the price or triple the price. And that's how Walmart makes money. That's not how Walmart makes money. That's not how Amazon makes money. That's not how Home Depot, Sephora, Ulta, whatever store you're going to, that's not how they make money. Here's how they make money. They go to suppliers that make these products and they say, we will let you put your product on our shelf and we're not going to pay you for these products. What we're going to do is we will sell these products then. We will collect the money from those sales. We will hold on to that money for 90 days, and then we will pay you your portion after 90 days is up. This is every business. Okay, so this has been around for hundreds of years, like creative finance. Like even, you remember when Elon Musk launched the Tesla truck, the Cybertruck, and he took $100 deposit and he ended up raising like $14 billion. That's also creative finance. finance. Like that guy got $14 billion in cash and he did not deliver a truck for 4 years. That's also creative finance, right? So creative finance is well beyond just real estate. It's happening all the time around us, and it allows you to get every type of deal done better. It'd almost be like, even if we're talking about podcasting, let's say I hire a podcast booker. I don't have one, but let's say I did have somebody who was booking my podcast. I could tell them, I will pay you once you get me on a show and I monetize in some way, then I'll pay you. That's also creative finance, right? Most people would think I pick them up front, then I get the service. Cool. All right. Where is it going in the future? Well, it's always been around. It's just that there's been nobody that can articulate it in a simple way and also tie in stories that go, wow, this is everywhere and this is happening. This is not like a needle in the haystack. This is like a haystack. And so it's going to compound. The community that I run, we have about 30,000 people. 5 years ago, we were doing about $1 billion in transactions. This year, we'll do close to $45 billion in transactions. And so it is 45 times larger than it was 5 years ago. And I think that in 5 more years, it'll be 45 times larger again.
Wow, that is really, when it works, and that's why it's growing. That's a testament right there. So let's talk about how people can get started. What are the first steps that someone can do to really dive in and take advantage of everything you're talking about?
I would say the best thing to do, a couple of things. I'm a lunatic, and so I love this business so much. On Saturday this week, I start a 100-city, 100-day tour where I go out and I will meet over 25,000 people in person, and I will help all of those people get their first deal for free. I went to Home Depot and I said, hey, Home Depot, Monster Energy, Bank of America, and a handful of my sponsors, I said, pay for this trip. It's going to cost me $1 million. If you guys can chip in for this, I don't even have to charge for a ticket. I don't have to sell anything. And I can just be a lunatic and go out and help 25,000 people in person. So our first city is Hawaii. Then we're going to Alaska, Oklahoma City, Chicago. Then I'm going to places like Fargo, North Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, all the way up into Manhattan, Ontario, Toronto, like everywhere you can imagine. 109 cities in 122 days is what the actual thing is. I would start by going out there, meeting real people in person, go to Creative Nation Tour. I have literally nothing to sell except for tacos at the taco truck. We'll bring like food in, and I'll show people how to do deals in person, because they could watch my YouTube channel. But I think what happens with people is they watch a YouTube channel and I give very specific instructions. And instead of them doing the activity that, like, let's say Maddie did in that YouTube video, they just jump to the next YouTube video and don't take any action. So I can tell you, go watch more videos. But I think in a lot of ways, the doom scrolling has really like killed people's attention span. The best thing people can do is just get out in person, meet me in your city. I will be on the road from literally this week, end of October, all the way until March. I will not see my personal home. My wife and my children are taking 6 months on the road with me to meet 25,000 people in person, which is what we currently have RSVP'd. So that's probably the best thing for them to do.
Agreed. And that's, I think, a really great place to wrap, just because we think that, like you said, getting out there, doing it in person, meeting people is a great way to get started. And so we couldn't agree more. We're so excited that you joined us. You have such an amazing perspective and insight and strategy that we want to utilize. We want everyone to take advantage of. So thank you so much, Pace, for being with us today.
You ladies are awesome. Thank you so much.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
And that's today's episode of The Build Up. If you love this conversation with Pace Morby, subscribe, share, and join us next time as we continue building wealth, one conversation at a time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice.
For specific recommendations, please consult with your financial, legal, or tax professional.
or always leaves your text on red. Leaves your text on red.
Built the Corky roof with $1,000 loan.
Tell us a little bit about how you actually came from.
Welcome to the build-up, John Roa.
Thanks for having me.
We're coming to you here from Studio 1873.
It's about 57% over 2.7 million.
So then, cheers.